We're starting in on overhauling the front calipers. These still have the pads in them. As you can see, the pads look pretty gross and they've been soaked with fork oil. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the bleed screw. And then what we're going to do is to try to force the pucks back into the caliper so we can slide the pads out. So let's go get ourselves a big pry bar. What we're going to do is take a pry bar and pry, and I'm prying on the brake pads, not the pucks. You do not want to damage the pucks. So once those are spread far enough apart, notice the pucks are in. Now we can take and very gently take and slide out the pads. Now notice we have the brake pads removed. Now we can pull out the springs, and then we can work on removing the pistons from the calipers. In order to pop this brake pad spring out, take note of where the wider portion of the spring, it is in the wider hole here, and then notice on the bottom there's a little smaller portion of the spring. Up here is your bleeding screw and your banjo bolt. So make sure the larger portion of that spring is, when you reinstall it, is up toward the bleeding screw and the banjo bolt. And gently pry out your spring, and we're going to put this in a container to where we're going to later clean that up. So you can always make sure you have a container. What we can do now is to work on removing the pistons from the calipers. We're going to again try to use air pressure to pop these pistons out. So we want to put the bleed screw back in and tighten it, and we want to put the banjo bolt back in. That way we can build up some air pressure when we try to pop those. Actually, we're going to put the banjo bolt in and we're going to take the bleed screw out. We're going to put compressed air in on the bleed screw and try to pop these pistons out. We're going to take and hold our fingers over two of the pistons and then apply compressed air to the hole. We're going to try to pop out two pistons at a time and then do the other two. And we're going to have to get a bolt. The pressure's coming out of the banjo bolt, so we're going to have to get a regular bolt to try to block off that air passageway. And we found a large bolt that will fit the banjo bolt hole. Now we can, when we apply pressure, we can let the pressure build up to be able to pop those pistons out. what we've done is put the bleeding screw back in, and we're going to try to blow air into the banjo bolt hole and see if that helps. Yep, that popped one. Okay, let's see if we can pop the others out. Of course, now that's not going to work. So we're going to try to put that piston back in and hold it and loosen up some of the others. We have one puck out on each side, and that is not working too well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the caliper and get as much crud off of it as I can, and then we're going to try to put one side of the pucks back in, and then be able to try to pop one set of pucks on each side. So we'll keep on trying that, and it's obviously going to be a major pain. Okay, we're going to have to try one puck or one piston at a time. So now I'm removing the, taking a toothpick and removing the piston seal and piston dust seal. There we go. That way we will remove the dust seals. We'll clean up the pistons and piston chambers one at a time, and then we will put the new seals in one at a time and then try to rebuild them that way. That's one. Now we'll get new seals and put them in this one and try to get the piston back in. And just like on the rear caliper, the bigger O-ring goes in the hole toward the rear. Okay, again, putting the O-ring is a real pain. Okay, we got the large O-ring, which is the piston O-ring. Now we're going to get the smaller dust O-ring. Okay, we have the dust O-ring in and the piston O-ring in, and now we're going to try to clean out that by blowing some compressed air in there. Now we're going to clean up the piston, and we're going to change out this dirty paper towel here. And then we're going to put some brake oil or brake fluid on the O-rings and on the side of the piston. And then we're going to try to insert that piston into the caliper. There, okay. The secret is putting enough brake fluid on that piston and O-rings. Then they'll slide right in. Okay, so we have the one labeled 13 replaced. Now we're going to do the one over here. So we're going to dig out the O-rings with the toothpick, do the exact same thing on this one over here. Now that you know how this one works, I'll do this one off camera. We have all the piston seals changed. The secret of doing this is popping one piston at a time. You hold your other fingers over, or a hammer or something that has a rubber end on it, and then you put some compressed air in there, pop out one, clean it up, put new seals in, lubricate it back up, put the piston in, and then do the others. Make sure you clean the caliper up really well before you do that, because you don't want to get any grit in the newly cleaned piston. So we put on a new rubber boot on the bleeding screw. We have new brass or copper washers on the banjo bolt. So let's go ahead and put those on there. And again, as before we mount the calipers onto the bike, we will put the new pads in and get everything ready to install. But there's the first of the front caliper. I'll do the other off camera because it's pretty much the same process. So hope you enjoyed the video on rebuilding your calipers, and we'll see you next video.